You're listening to Comic Reflections, episode 246. I'm your host, Nicholas Prom.
And I'm Spencer Valdez.
Comic Reflections is brought to you by The Outhouse. You can find our show and other nifty content at theouthousers.com. And if you enjoyed this program, please subscribe to us on either iTunes or Stitcher.
You can also rate and review us on iTunes.
Or Stitcher.
Or Stitcher, yeah.
Very good.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. We're back from hiatus. The holidays were crazy, and it's like the end of February before we got back. This is the longest we've come back from our holidays.
We had the holidays, and then we moved.
Yeah.
And just stuff.
Yeah. Jeff and I came back and recorded again last week and recorded again earlier today. But now you and I are back. It's great.
Yeah. I think we should mention that we're doing a bit of format change.
Yeah. I realized that we were going to do the showcase, the most editions, and the Marvel Essential volumes, but for me it was a really grueling pace. Mm-hmm. The amount of content we were doing for the shows and the long-term commitment to each series
was like 20 years to get through
anything, and that's doing 3 issues out of each book every week,
right?
Which is an awful lot because we were doing too much. So rather than do that, we're going to bring it back to doing like an issue or two.
Yeah.
But I'll do an issue or two with Jeff every week, and I'll do an issue or two with you each week. And we're still going to be mainly in the Silver and Bronze Age. We may, stretch those parameters a bit, but it's still going to be old school comics, and we'll hopefully touch on a lot of different series that people will be interested in. It's just change it up a little more frequently, so I don't get so burnt out.
Some of the non-big two companies.
There are possibilities. Yeah. So anyway, today you and I are going to talk about a series. We've actually been talking about doing this book for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's and I love this series. What I've read of it. It's Arak, Son of Thunder, and we're going to talk about the first issue today.
It's a big first issue.
Yeah. Cover dated September of 1981. I almost said 61. And the lead story is called The Sword and the Serpent. It was written by Roy Thomas, penciled by Ernie Colon, and inked by Tony DiZuniga. Actually, can you let me see that? I actually forgot to write down who did the cover art. Oh, it's Ernie Colon and Dick Giordano, who is Dick Giordano is the editor of the book, but he inked the cover.
Right.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, let us begin. Did you have any background stuff you wanted to throw in before we get started on the story itself?
Oh, right. Yeah. So,
hey, you're a Native American.
I am.
That's a thing.
It is. Arak's
a Native American hero. Spoiler.
Yes. Spoilers.
It's going to be a big thing. It's a big deal. Yeah. It's on the splash page.
Yeah, so our creative team, Roy Thomas. Arak was created kind of oddly. DC kind of picked up Roy Thomas.
Yeah, he had left Marvel. I think, it's 1981. It's the Jim Shooter era at Marvel. And a lot of the people who had previously been happy at Marvel decided, to hell with this.
Right.
I'm not going to work on this guy. Or they kind of got kicked to the curb. People like, Marv Wolfman went back to DC and created the new Teen Titans with George Perez.
Right, yeah.
Gene Colan got let go from Marvel, and he moved over and did some work at DC on Batman, Wonder Woman, Night Force, and I know there's something. Gem, Son of Saturn, things like that. And Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan, not Ernie Colan,
right,
who drew this book. Gene Colan, they did Tomb of Dracula, which was a book that Jim Shooter pulled the plug on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He had his opinions about what Marvel should and shouldn't be putting out, and he wasn't a fan of that. And he wasn't a fan of Gene Colan.
And I mean, it's kind of his prerogative at that point.
You're the editor-in-chief, but if a book is selling...
That's true.
Your personal tastes shouldn't come and... Don't mess with things that are good selling books.
Yeah. So Roy Thomas comes over from Marvel.
Yeah.
And DC's like, look, we got to pick up on this Conan stuff.
Yeah, because he had done a very successful book at Marvel, and actually in the 70s, Conan was doing, in some markets or in some ways, better business for them than Spider-Man even.
Oh, wow.
It was such a success as a licensed book. And at the end of the 70s, Star Wars also became a big deal at Marvel as well.
Yeah.
So two big licensed properties that were great for the company. But anyway, Roy's jump shift to DC, and he, at the debuting the same month as Arak, he also had All-Star Squadron, which was the Justice Society of America in World War II. And not just the JSA, but other Golden Age heroes. So it's really his wheelhouse. I don't know if you've ever read any of his Invaders series he did at Marvel.
Invaders, yeah.
Oh, you have? Okay. Yeah, that's really good stuff. Golden Age heroes is like, give that to Roy. And also sword and sorcery characters, give that to Roy. These are really his strong areas of expertise. And this is another great,
Absolutely.
and if underappreciated series of his.
Well, I mean, it ran for 50 issues.
50 issues and an annual. And, which pales in comparison to his success on Conan. But he definitely did different things with Arak. Arak was rooted in, as a character, he created whole cloth.
Right.
Not Conan, which was, from Robert E. Howard's books. But also, Arak, and we're going to go through the series, he's blending a lot of fictionalized things with actual real-life figures like Charlemagne or Carolus Magnus. So we get this weird blend of the Dark Ages period of history mixed with sword and sorcery, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Jeff and I did a couple of issues several years ago, or episodes rather, all about Arak, and they were great. Enjoy those a lot, and I'm glad to be revisiting the series. I thought I had read this first issue before. I was mistaken. I had never read it.
It's good.
It is good, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, so, let me finish up with the creative team.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So Roy Thomas comes over, and he actually pulls Ernie Colon.
Yeah.
And Tony...
DeZuniga. DeZuniga was doing a lot of work at DC already as part of that Filipino invasion, which is something I'll get into more as we progress through the series.
Okay.
I don't want it's a big tangent, and we've already had it opened with a big tangent.
Right, yeah.
But DeZuniga is probably best known for his work on Jonah Hex at DC.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, both these guys worked on Conan with Roy Thomas. And so he's had experience with them, and he's like, look, I'm going to kind of do the same thing. When I bring these guys in, they kind of know what we want. And,
interesting to note, as we go through, go ahead and take a look at the book. I really like Ernie Colon's pencils, but I don't think he and DeZuniga is the best pairing. Because, I recognize both of their styles because I'm familiar with their larger bodies of work. And DeZuniga's inks really overtake Colon's pencils in a way. It kind of buries Colon's style. And we'll see, DeZuniga doesn't ink the whole series, and Colon doesn't pencil the whole thing. Right. We'll see ones that are either Colon inked himself or other lighter hands inked him, and you really see his style emerge more. You'll see it, but it really ends up looking more like DeZuniga did the whole thing.
Gotcha.
In this issue, anyway.
So our story kind of starts off with a Viking ship coming through the fog. And they're frustrated with their, not captain, I can't remember what they would call him, Jarl.
Yeah.
Their Jarl.
He's the leader.
Because they got kind of swept off the sea.
Right, they're off course somewhere.
And they have to make it back somehow. And while they're kind of bickering back and forth, one of the Vikings looks over the side of the ship, and he sees just this small
canoe.
Yeah, and they kind of they turn the boat towards the canoe, and they paddle over because this is the paddling classic Viking ship.
Yeah,
with the giant
with the oars and the big jet dragon dragon head. It's a dragon ship.
Yeah, they pull up next to the canoe, and they see that there's a boy just laying in the canoe in the middle of the ocean,
right?
Where they've been kind of swept off. He's obviously been swept off, and he's unconscious. And so they pull him aboard, and they kind of revive him. And standing over him is Sigvald, the Jarl, the leader of the Vikings, and he has the kind of hammer of Thor.
Yeah, but they call him something. They call him something different here.
Yeah,
is it Thunor?
Yeah, Thunor.
Yeah.
And they don't say Odin. They said Othin.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of have to.
There are many variations on it because
Right.
some people say Woden or Wotan even. So it's
Wu-Tang.
a lot of this stuff. Yeah, ain't nothing to F with. But Roy Thomas really throws in a lot of historical stuff in. Even when his Conan stuff in the fictional things, he'll tie things that are similar or like our real world history into that Hyperborean age. Mm-hmm. And he's very good at developing very complex, rich, layered fantasy worlds.
Right. So the child, we don't know his name yet.
Yeah.
He's kind of laying there and he sees the necklace of Thomar, and he gets the knife of Sigvald and swipes and cuts the knife or the necklace from Sigvald's throat.
Right.
How would you like it if you just rescued someone and they're immediately
going
for your throat, And so Sigvald pulls his sword, is about to kill the kid because you can't put up with that.
Right.
And Hermold grabs the hand of Sigvald and kind of stays his hand from killing the kid.
Right.
We would find out that Hermold is a Frank. He is not a Viking.
Right.
And so the Frankenland is kind of France, Germany area in Europe. And so he's somehow become part of this clan of Vikings. And in this issue, we don't actually find out anything about that. But he
there's a lot of seeds planted for things to be revealed later.
Right.
We don't know why Arak, who he doesn't have a name yet, but
why he was lost at sea, why he was...
Right. We don't know how... Who was it?
Hermold.
Hermold joined the Vikings from the Franks. So there's a lot of things.
Right.
And you'll get nice seeds like this throughout the series.
Excellent. So after kind of staying the hand of Sigvald just like, you take care of him then. This wolf pup, I think he calls him over and over again. Oh, wolf cub. And so Hermold says, fine, I need a slave anyways. And kind of wraps soon to be known as Arak in some furs, and decides to kind of bring him in as his own with his pal Olaf.
Yeah, he's taking him under his wing.
Yeah. And begins to teach him the ways of the Vikings.
Yeah.
Arak is given a sword from Hermold.
Yeah. He said it belonged to his friend Arak. And Arak...
He couldn't pronounce Arak very well.
And so he says Arak, and then Hermold decides to, why don't we call you that?
Yeah. He picks up the sword really well, sword and shield, takes the bow, but really he takes to an axe.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah.
And years pass in this kind of montage of fighting, and Arak and the Vikings go out and raid like Vikings do.
Yeah.
They go to Northumbria, and it's kind of this is where we kind of start really getting some of the history in
real world history.
Yeah, and there's a monastery, and these Vikings come in and they just lay waste to the monastery.
Yeah.
Totally kill everyone. Sigvald kind of chases the head, the abbot of the monastery, kind of back to his little chamber, and the abbot's trying to hide specific boxes and treasures and things. And so Sigvald's standing over him.
Wait. We have an interruption.
We do.
We interrupted with a Twinkie alert. A Hostess Fruit Pie ad.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Wonder Woman versus the Robot Master.
Yes.
Do you want to tell me all about this?
So we have the Robot Master, whom I've never heard of.
No. Most of the villains is this your initial outing with the Hostess Fruit Pie ads or Hostess ads?
I just ignore them usually.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, more often than not, the villains of them are totally made up for the ad.
Gotcha.
The Robot Master, he's just this dopey-looking guy, but he's created 4 robot duplicates of himself. Uh-huh. And he's going to take over the world or something, right?
Commit crimes of the century.
Yes.
But for some reason, Wonder Woman has a bag of Twinkies.
Yeah.
Just because.
Yeah.
And so she decides, well, instead of fighting, I'm here. And she tosses them all a Twinkie.
and she realizes she finds out who the robot master it really is, not the robot.
Right.
Because by the way, they're all identical to him. That's
Uh-huh.
important. Because the robot master eats the Twinkies, and
What's just Twinkie cakes?
robots don't want Twinkies.
Right. They want to eat humans.
Yeah, so his nefarious plan is foiled, and I think Wonder Woman takes him to jail.
Yeah.
No due process for this guy.
Yeah, but he gets Twinkies. So.
Yeah, and the robots say perhaps we could be reprogrammed to enjoy Hostess Twinkies.
No, because if you don't inherently love Twinkies, you'll never love Twinkies.
I like other Hostess products. I never was really a big Twinkie guy. I love the fruit pies, and I like the cupcakes.
Then
Ho
we know
Ho's,
how
Ding
much you
Dong.
hate America.
What? Me? I think other than Snowball, Twinkie is like the bottom of the barrel for the Hostess product line.
You think so?
Yeah, that's my own personal feeling about it.
Okay.
So, but anyway, now back to Arak.
Back to Arak. Sigvald has chased down the abbot, and
Hey, Abbott! Oh, sorry.
just stabs him because
Yeah.
he's a Viking, and that's what they do to monks.
Yeah.
And as Sigvald is digging through the treasures of the monastery, Arak kind of stands over him. He's like, why would you do that? Like, he basically says, hey, you're a jerk.
Yeah.
Why do you have to kill this guy? And he kind of turns to the abbot, and he's not dead.
Right.
The monk sees Arak, and he sees the redness of his skin.
And freaks out. He's never seen a Native American before.
Right. And so
most honkies haven't at this time.
He immediately thinks he sees the devil.
Of course.
And he whips out his cross at him.
Which does nothing.
And dies.
Yeah.
And so Arak, his kind of first experience probably with a monk, gets called a devil.
Even though he was expressing concern for this guy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. You'll get this kind of stuff all the time. This happens to Rom Space Knight, too.
And so they're kind of... at one point, the Vikings throw a monk off of, like, the top of the monastery.
Yeah.
You see him kind of falling down.
Yeah.
No! And then there's a monk that's kind of injured on the ground and not dead.
Yeah.
And Arak stays the hand of a Viking. The Viking attacks him. Arak pulls his his axe, and they kind of get into it, and he just lays the guy out.
Yeah. To death.
No.
He does kill him.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, right, yeah, there's the blood on the thing.
And the other guys are like, well, good thing that guy didn't have any kinsmen to take revenge on you.
Yeah.
Because that's important. If they hadn't mentioned that, that would be a serious dangling,
right, yeah.
thing.
They head back to Viking land.
They go home.
They go home. And they kind of settle in for winter. So there's a dog, and it's going to have pups. And Sigvald mocks Arak as we turn the page.
Okay.
Yep. Arak raises the pup, so on. But one of the treasures, kind of going back a little bit, that Sigvald had
was this
found.
bejeweled cross.
Yeah.
And he hung it upside down, so it'd be like the hammer of Thunor.
Right. Yeah, because it looked very similar to that, and he's like, well, obviously it's this. And has it hanging up in their keep.
Yeah, because he's doing it from his own cultural lens.
Right.
Spencer and I went to college.
And so Arak, seeing it kind of hanging up, is like, what even is that? And he's talking to Hermold. And so Hermold tells him basically kind of what's going on in mainland Europe at the time.
Yeah. Rome is fading.
Yeah. At this point, it has pretty much faded out. Doesn't much have. The only power that it has is the power of the Pope. But the Pope is, like, there are two main churches at this point.
Right.
Vying for,
supremacy.
Yeah. And so Hermold tells him of Carlomangus.
Who is Charlemagne.
Right. In preparing for this episode, I read a article in
Alter Ego.
Alter Ego.
Nice.
Interviewing Roy Thomas. And one thing he mentioned that kind of surprised me, I'm not sure why, he avoided using the name Charlemagne. And I think,
Because it's a nickname.
yeah.
But it's like if he was talking about Tamer the Lame, wouldn't you say Tamerlane?
Right.
You know, it's just
Yeah, sure.
it's frequently applied.
Right.
But people don't say Carolus Magnus as much.
Right.
And that was his actual name.
Well, his actual name was Charles I.
Well, but you know what I'm saying. Like
right.
it's
Yeah.
Dang it. Okay. You know what I'm going at with this. Okay.
Yeah. So, just brief history. Year 800, about the time this is happening, Charlemagne is crowned
Holy Roman Emperor.
Holy Roman Emperor.
Yeah.
And starts the beginning of the uniting of the European continent.
Right.
Under one monarch. This is to reestablish the seat of power in Europe, but also to kind of reinstate the power of the Pope in Rome.
Yeah.
By the Pope going and saying, under my authority, I am crowning you the Holy Roman Emperor. He re-solidifies the idea that, yeah, you might be emperor, but I gave you this.
Yeah.
You know? And so this is where we kind of start to see the fight between the Church of the East and the West.
Yeah.
And then the kind of cultural wars between the East and the West.
Right. So at this point, the Roman Empire is really done.
Right.
And it's taken a new, what's left of it is kind of being reformed into something different.
Right.
Okay.
They would still call it the Roman Empire.
But it's really not.
No.
Okay. It's not based in Italy. Okay.
No.
It's coming back to me now.
Right. So spring arrives. With spring comes raiding again.
Yeah.
So Sigvold has decided that he's going to take the Bejeweled Cross.
Yeah. I want to say it is very tasteful of Roy to avoid them attacking nunneries, just monasteries.
Right, yeah. Because,
it's a Code era comic,
right,
and you know what goes down
right
when that occurs. Okay.
I get so. He explains what the cross is.
Yeah.
Where the idea came from.
But it seems like is it Thunor or no, the Viking. What's his name?
Sigvald.
Sigvald doesn't have all the information.
Oh no, sorry. This is Hermold.
Hermold, thank you.
Yeah.
Hermold doesn't have all the information. He knows some stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And it's interesting because you think of this time. There's no mass media. What you know about stuff is just what you've heard people talk about.
Right.
For most people are not educated.
Right.
And so I think this rings fairly. It feels true to how a person might be if they lived in that age.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Sharing the bits of information you've picked up.
Right. So on their way to Northumberland again, basically to the same monastery. On the mast of the ship, Sigvold has strapped the hammer for Thunor and slashed the upside down cross. As kind of their this is going to protect us on our raid, and Thunor will be with us.
Yeah.
And so they approach the Northumberland again.
Yeah.
And this time it's night, and it's eerie. They don't see any movement. They don't, And as they're approaching, they look out and they see this rock jettisoning out of the ocean, and there's a woman standing on top of it.
Yeah. Pre-show, I mentioned this scene really reminded me of, I think it's an early issue of Eerie magazine with this Frank Frazetta cover of a witch standing on a rock and waves are splashing up. It's really rad. And I don't know, this just made me think of that.
Yeah. So she does some arm twirling stuff, and out of the sea rises a giant serpent. And
it's rad.
Yeah, it looks really cool. So one thing I kind of noticed is that reading through all of those Green Lantern books.
Oh, yeah?
It's not that you see the same monster over and over again.
But you see Gil Kane draw the same kinds of monsters.
Right, and it does get kind of tedious. And this was yes, a rad monster that I've never seen.
Because it's so fresh for you, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I always liked, in the Marvel, the Conan books, the monsters in those, especially as drawn by John Buscema, they're all kind of different. He does it to fit the story or whatever,
right.
So
So the Vikings see this and they immediately start calling out for Othin and Thunor to preserve them. The woman in the water hears them and just pays them no heed.
Right.
And the serpent just demolishes the ship.
Yeah.
Arak makes it to the shore with a few of the other Vikings. But as soon as they make it to shore with Sigvald, the monks come out of nowhere and just attack the crap out of them.
Right.
One of the monks just nails Sigvald in the forehead. With,
it kills him, right?
No.
Oh, no?
Doesn't kill him. No.
Okay. But yeah, the Vikings were like, we're outnumbered. We're like, they set down their arms. They're like, look, we mean peace this time. Mm-hmm. But these monks remembered the last raid, and they were going to fight back or whatever this time.
You know what? It wasn't Sigvald. It was
a different guy.
Hermdor.
Hermor?
Yeah.
That's not his name, but anyway.
Not his name. Yeah. You know what we're talking about.
I think maybe next time we should be making notes of these names.
We should probably write down the
Both
names,
of us should.
Yeah.
Jeff would really be struggling with this, way more, so don't feel too bad.
So the monk attacks and just kills him. Arak immediately jumps on the guy and strangles him to death.
Yeah.
And
then the other monks are like, hey, we'll be cool now.
Well, they attack Arak as well, and they knock him out.
Right.
And they kind of lock up the Sigvald and Arak, and the monk that he saved.
Yeah.
The winter before.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning of the winter before, I think recognizes him.
Oh, good.
And says, "Look,
he's kind of a hard guy to miss."
Right. Yeah. He kind of nurses him back up and wakes him up and like kind of helps him. And he says, "I'm Brother Philip, and we're not all as vengeful as him you slew. You and your Jarl were spared. He for his rank, you for the strange color of your skin."
Right.
So
the other Vikings were killed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we finally kind of are introduced to this woman and
her weird brother.
Right. So we find out that she's come from
White Cathay.
Yeah.
And the bulk of this series will be Arak's quest to reach White Cathay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For one reason or another.
Right. And she's kind of used sorcery kind of stuff to get the monks to kind of do her bidding. And make them follow her. Her brother's name is Argalia, and the sister's name is Angelica. Yeah.
Argalia is the guy. Yeah. You said it right. Okay.
Yeah. They have two bodyguards who are
these big Chinese guys.
Yeah.
But Argalia and Angelica are honkies.
Yeah. They were welcomed by us because they claim to be the offspring of their land's king Gallifron and true Christians. So they
which was a ruse that they played on the monks because she's immediately using sorcery to take control and stuff.
Right, yeah. He immediately calls her a godless magician. Unlike her brother, summed up her mighty sea dragon to strike fear into our hearts. And so Eric's like, all right, let's get out of here. And the brother Philip is like, so look, we kind of need your help here. We're kind of stuck. Mm-hmm. Sorry we killed all your friends, but he immediately says the only thing that's going to save us is prayer. And Arak is like, look, I prayed to gods, now dead when I was a child. Those prayers did not save me from becoming the tribalist orphan, fleeing eastward over the great water. And he's immediately interrupted by Angelica.
Yeah.
Now, Red One, you are again without family or companions, are you not? And she kind of tries to sweeten up to Arak.
Yeah.
And as a reader, you kind of understand, this is kind of shady. We know what's going on here.
Yeah.
But as she's kind of doing that, Sigvald is like, why do you want him? He's a slave wolf cub. I
could serve you much better.
Yeah.
She disagrees.
Right. And so she decides she's going to take Arak to meet her brother, and they were going to go, and she's going to kind of show him some of her power. And she wears a ring that when she puts in her mouth, she becomes invisible.
Yeah.
She gives him his knife back. What else does she do? She's like, okay, let's leave this place and go meet with Charlemagne.
Okay.
Basically, she's like, we want to go meet him. You should meet him. Let's go.
So they'll all go.
Yeah.
But then.
Right, and he's like, well, how are we going to get there in this ship with no oars? She's like, oh, my magic. So they hop in, and the boat just starts moving.
Right.
Which, pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to row, which is nice.
Yeah.
But the rock that she was standing upon when they first came into the new Northumberland, there's 3 monks and a Viking standing on it.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, Eric's like, hey, let's go spare them. Let's go save them.
Let's go pick them up.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, no chance. And she brings that beast back up.
Yeah, the serpent.
Yeah. And Eric's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And he's like, I promised I would not lift a blade to you or your brother, but I didn't say anything about your beast friend. Your serpent monster.
So he gets a hold of that cross that was bound to the mast.
Right, yeah. So he dives into the water. Excuse me. The monks and the guy on the rock were actually Sigvald and the monks that were trying to kill Arak.
Okay.
She had placed him there as, I think she was doing it so that she can prove her might to Arak.
Oh, she's like show the snake eating the guys.
Right.
Okay.
And Eric's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. He dives into the water, and he grabs one of the monks, and Sigvald was like, you're going to let me drown, fool? And Eric's like, yeah, you're a dick.
Yeah.
But before even Arak can, help, the serpent scoops up.
And eats Sigvald.
Yeah.
Good. He was a douchebag.
Yeah. And so he grabs, I think he actually ended up saving Brother Philip.
Yeah.
And he drags him up onto the rock, and they see the mast of the ship kind of bobbing into the water.
Of the destroyed ship.
Of the destroyed ship.
Sorry, I got ahead of it. Sorry.
And he sees the cross bound to that mast, and he scoops that up. And
it's pointed at the bottom of the crossbar.
Right, yeah.
So he hurls it like a sword.
Well, first...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so the brother of Angelica...
What's the guy's name again? Arguglia?
Yeah.
That's not it, but whatever. Argalia.
He notices that some thunderclouds are rolling in. And she's like, don't worry about those. But the editor's note is the sorcerer's voice however, lacks conviction. Like I think she's definitely worried about where these clouds come from.
Okay.
And so Arak is standing between Brother Philip and the serpent. And he basically cries, look, if you're going to take one of us, you're going to take both of us, and I'm going to take you out too. And he says, cross of one god or hammer of another, strike for me now. And he just throws the thing. And as he throws it, a bolt of lightning also hits the serpent. And
Rad.
So it's stabbed, and he's electrocuted.
Do you think it acted like a lightning rod? Like it stabbed?
Yeah, probably.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. Next moment, the sea dragon is gone, swallowed up in the depths of time as well as space, as bruised and weary warriors collapse in exhaustion. So Brother Phil was like, look, God was with you, Viking. And he's like, some god or something. And he kind of gives us
He's kind of like, I don't know which one.
Right, but he says...
Because they called him the son of Hino.
Once the wise men of my dead tribe told me I was son of Hino, whose name means thunder.
Yeah.
I know not if it was he who saved me this night to show me he lives and has followed me across the world, but perhaps I'll find the answer I seek at the court of careless Mangus, king of the Franks. And so we're kind of left off with them heading towards Frankenland.
Right.
To the seat of power. The awesome thing that I really loved about the end of this
there's some back matter. It's a full text page that Roy Thomas wrote out.
And it's basically a short history of the world. And so, I mean, it's very brief, but you get the...
it gives a lot of background on the setting, the real world historical setting of this comic. If you want to go into that.
Right. Well, so I think we did it at the top of the show.
Oh, okay.
Rather than at the end. But in this interview that I read, they talk about around the world in 80 issues. And so...
that was the plan.
I don't think that was necessarily his plan, but I think they were trying to get Arak home.
So the plan was to be a globe-trotting kind of...
but headed east. And so he was going to go east around the back way.
See, that's cool.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, I am going to enjoy this a lot. There's 50 issues. I've picked up, I think, the first 33 or something like that.
So we got plenty to go for now. I think we'll have plenty of time for both of us to fill in our runs of this. Anything else before we wrap up, Spencer?
I don't think so.
Okay. Comic Reflections is recorded in Portland, Oregon, and produced by Sean Roof.
What a jerk.
Aww.
Black Canary.
I'll need a sparring partner.
I'm Zatanna. Why do you care about some leggy dame in nylons? Or have I answered my own question? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for magic.
Black Canary and Zatanna, together in one podcast. I'm Ryan Daly, and I've got a thing for superheroes in fishnet stockings. That's why I started Power of Fishnets, the Black Canary and Zatanna podcast. Join me every 2 weeks as I celebrate the Blonde Bombshell and the Mistress of Magic in their exciting adventures published by DC Comics. Power of Fishnets, available on iTunes and at fireandwaterpodcast.com.
The Lonely Hearts Romance Comics Podcast, in which 4 guys talk about romance comics and about romances in comics, with Siskoid.
We're all French Canadians here.
Marty.
In horror comics, there's often like this little, romance tinge, I guess.
Okay.
Bass.
We just turned on him.
And yours truly, Fern.
I'm very aroused.
Featuring the overproduced wonder that is romance comics theater every episode.
Dan, I knew it couldn't last from the first day you eyeballed me when I reported to work. It wouldn't matter if I washed in laundry soap and came to work in a burlap sack. I'd turn you on. And you have the same effect on me.
I do?
The Lonely Hearts Romance Comics Podcast, available at lonelyheartspodcast.wordpress.com and on iTunes.
We've had a comic book romance.
With his army of evil on the march, Bird Degaton appears to have time on his side. But when duty calls, they answer, bringing the fight for freedom to the front lines. They are the mystery men and women known as the Justice Society of America.
Hey there, my name is Al Girding, and I have a favor to ask. If you're a fan of the Justice Society of America or other DC Comics heroes of the Golden Age, please listen to my new podcast, The All-Star Comics Review. Grab your reprints, DC Archive editions, or the original comics if you're lucky enough to own them, and let's explore the adventures of the JSA and other Golden Age greats. Follow along with the All-Star Comics Review podcast, now found on iTunes, allstarcomicsreview.blogspot.com, and Facebook.
Aquaman and Firestorm fighting crime together. Soak them down or burn them up. No one does it better. Whenever you find trouble, they'll always be there to catch them in a bubble or even torch their hair. They stand for truth and justice in sea, on land, and air. Firestorm and Aquaman, they make a super pair.
The Fire and Water Podcast, celebrating Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, and Firestorm, the Nuclear Man.
Available weekly on Aquaman Shrine, Firestorm Fan, and on iTunes and Stitcher.
I'm one of your hosts, the Irredeemable Shag, here to talk about Firestorm. Along with me is my co-host Rob Kelly, here to talk about some guy that talks to fish.
Really? You're going to pull this crap during the promo? Bad enough I have to put up with your shenanigans every week, but...
Star Wars, give me those Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars, don't let them end. Star Wars, those near and far wars, talking about Star Wars on a podcast. I'm Ryan Daly, and welcome to...
And I'm the Irredeemable Shag.
Dude, what are you doing?
What?
Give Me Those Star Wars is my show.
Well, you're part of the Fire and Water Podcast Network, so it's really our show.
But if you show up on the promo, people will think you're the co-host.
I'm not?
No, the show will have rotating guests.
You just took that idea from my Justice League International podcast.
You took that idea from my Secret Origins podcast.
And you took that idea from Dead Bothan Spies.
That was my podcast.
Wait a minute. I sang the theme song with you.
So?
So, technically, I appear on every episode. I'm part of the foundation of this new Star Wars show.
That's true.
So, you want to take this from the top, or what?
I'm Ryan Daly. Join me and a galaxy of guest stars on Give Me Those... including the Irredeemable Shag, whose voice you will technically hear on every episode, on Give Me Those Star Wars.
The official Star Wars show of the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
Available on iTunes and Stitcher and at fireandwaterpodcast.com.
Kalabak, Tassad, it is I, Darkseid. I command you to listen to the Who's Who podcast. Uncover the powers and weaknesses of the Super Friends so that I may destroy them.
Aquaman and Superman, Animal Man and Plastic Man, Firestorm and Nuclear Man, Batman and Hawkman, 2D Man and Hour Man.
Who are all these people, man?
They're all part of the DC Who's Who. Ultra Boy and Booster Gold, Lightning Lass and Hippolyta, Phantom Stranger, Etrick and Arizia and Woozy Winks.
Hey.
What?
What about that one guy?
What guy?
Mr. Pretzel, Mr. Lipstick, Mr. Mitzelfuzzle?
Mr. Mitzi's Pitlick?
Yeah, him.
He's also part of the DC Who's Who.
Who's Who, the definitive podcast of the DC Universe.
Available monthly at Aquaman Shrine, Firestorm Fan, and on iTunes and Stitcher as part of the Fire and Water Podcast.
Warlord Worlds, a fan podcast devoted to the comic creations of Mike Grell, including Warlord, John Sable, Starslayer, Shaman's Tears, and Green Arrow. I'm Darren.
And I'm Ruth. We hope you'll join us as we discuss the stories, characters, and art in the many excellent comics from writer and artist Mike Grell.
Warlord Worlds is available at podbean.com and on iTunes and Stitcher.
Find us at warlordworlds.com.
I'm Mike Gillis.
And I'm Casey Dorn, and we want to ask you an important question.
Are you sick and tired of other panel discussion shows wasting your time droning on and on about foreign policy, economics, and human rights?
Or do you want to hear conversations about things that actually matter?
We host a podcast called Radio versus the Martians. Every month we gather a panel of our nation's finest minds and plunge a rusty prison shank into the heart of tough questions that have an impact on the lives of real people like you.
Like, are drivers required to pull over for the Ghostbusters?
Is the United Federation of Planets actually an oppressive dictatorship run by guidance counselors?
Is Arnold Schwarzenegger secretly a genius?
And are we being mean when we laugh at movies that are so bad they're good?
So write your congressman and let them know that Radio vs. the Martians is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and on radioversusthemartians.com.
Justice League International, Bwahaha Podcast. A new monthly show chronicling the adventures of the JLI era by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. We'll be going issue by issue in release order, tackling the core Justice League title, Justice League Europe, and the quarterly book. Along the way, we'll take time out for special episodes covering various spin-offs, cartoon appearances, the infamous TV pilot, and much more. So join me in an ever-changing roster of guest hosts as we celebrate your favorite JLI members, such as
Martian Manhunter,
Batman,
Dr. Fate,
Black Canary,
Fire,
Ice,
Maxwell Lord,
Oberon,
Captain Marvel,
Rocket Red,
Captain Atom,
Mr. Miracle,
Guy Gardner,
Booster Gold,
Blue Beetle,
Nort,
and many, many more. Justice League International, Bwahaha Podcast, coming March 2016 as part of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Want to make something of it?
Superman, Blue Beetle, Captain Marvel, Firestorm, the Crimson Avenger, Batman, Halo, Guy Gardner, the Sandman, Shadowlass, Dollman, the Star-Spangled Kid, the Flash, the Phantom Stranger, Power Girl, Hawkman, Fury, the Challengers of the Unknown, Nightwing, the Whip, Johnny Thunder, the Suicide Squad, Deadman, the Spectre, Warlord, Amazing Man, Hourman, Adam Strange, Dr. Occult, the Doom Patrol, Captain Comet, Creep, Green Lantern, Uncle Sam, the Guardian, Batgirl, Dr. Mid-Jonah Hex, Black Khan, the Manhunter, the Guardians of the Floronic, Blue Devil, Dr. Fate, the Legion of Super, the Secret Origins Podcast, covering every issue of DC's Secret Origins comic from the 1980s. Hosted by Ryan Daly and a multitude of guests from the podcast and blogging community. Secret Origins Podcast. Find it on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at fireandwaterpodcast.com.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Chris. What's up?
I just got back from the comic store.
What'd you get?
Some really good books. They had the latest issues of Saga and Batman, and I got the latest collection of Walking Dead.
That's cool. I just got some in the mail, too. I got the latest collections of Adventures into the Unknown, The Spirit, and Young Romance.
I've never heard of any of those.
Oh, they're all from the Golden Age.
The Golden Age?
You've heard of the Golden Age of comics, right?
Well, of course, but I've just never read that much from it.
Oh, you're missing out. There's some great material here. And nowadays, they're really reprinting a lot of it.
I tried it once or twice, but I never got into it.
Oh, you should really try again, man. There are some amazing writers working in that era. Bill Finger, Gardner Fox, Joe Simon, and some of the best artists to ever work in the industry. Jack Kirby, Will Eisner, Joe Kubert. And it wasn't just about the superheroes then. They produced science fiction books, crime, romance, humor, all sorts of genres.
Wow, you really love that stuff. You should do a podcast about it.
You know, you're right. I should do a podcast, and you should do it with me. We can call it Comics in the Golden Age.
And we could create a website for it, comicsinthegoldenage.com.
And we could also publish episodes on iTunes and Stitcher, and make a fan page to follow over on Facebook.
Heck, we could even talk about the golden age of the modern age, also known as 90s Image Comics.
No, Chris. No.
So join us for the Comics in the Golden Age podcast, available through iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us on Facebook or at comicsinthegoldenage.com.